Dzień dobry, witam Państwa serdecznie na spotkaniu z Janelle Brown, autorką książek Oszustka i Będę, tobą. Druga z tych powieści ukaże się 28 września nakładem wydawnictwa Agora. Janelle, good morning, great to have you here and thank you for doing this first of all.
My pleasure, it's lovely to be talking to Poland.
Yeah, and by studying your biography, I can see that you have been writing your whole life, almost professional life at least, but you started as a journalist, and it must have been extremely interesting to write about technology and digital revolution at the turn of the millennium. So can you share some experiences from that period?
Yes, so I graduated from college right into the first kind of the early .com boom in San Francisco, and was working at Wired magazine in the mid to late 90s, and then at Salon. And it was a crazy time. It was all so brand new. Everything, there was the first digital music, the first digital video, the first online communities. And, the city, San Francisco, was transforming so quickly and becoming this technology mecca. And, everyone who lived through that era has stories about the crazy parties where they would bring a circus in and be, giving away, have fire dancers, and it was pretty wild times. It felt like the Wild West. Everyone was trying lots of new things, and it was lots of young people with a lot of money trying to figure out the future of the internet. Mm-hmm. So, and I wrote about that for Wired, and then for a magazine called Salon.
Mm-hmm. So what changed that you decided to become a full-time author in a demanding, I would say, and competitive thriller genre? I know that your first two books were a bit different than what you are doing now, what you're writing now. So why did you decide to become a full-time author?
Yeah. I was tired of having to tell the truth. When you're a journalist, you always have to. Mm-hmm. You have to tell the story the way it actually happened. And sometimes it's not the best story. I'd be working on a story and thinking, God, this would be so much better if so-and-so had done this, or they'd said this, and you can't do that. It's more fun to make stories up, in my opinion. I like making stories up and letting my imagination go free. But really, I'd always wanted to be a novelist. I'd always wanted to write books since I was a little kid. And journalism was really something that I did along the way to have a career, to learn more about writing, to have a job. And once I sold my first novel, I was able to say, okay, I don't need to do journalism anymore. And my first two books are a little different, but not so different. They don't have the suspense element to them, but I think all of my books are about dysfunctional families and secrets and lies and things like that. So they have that much in common.
But does your journalistic experience help you in any way during maybe research phase or writing itself?
Oh, absolutely. Journalism was a great tool for learning how to research. I can research anything now. If I have a question about something from my book, I know all the different tools to use to research a subject. And also, there's a discipline that you learn from journalism. You only have, a couple thousand words to tell a story. And so you learn about the economy of storytelling and structure and focusing, taking a story and distilling it down to the most important elements. So I learned a lot of discipline from being a journalist.
Mm-hmm. But don't you miss, working with other people? Because I can imagine that being a writer, full-time writer, can be really solitary job.
Yeah. Yes, that was my favorite thing about having a job in an office, is being around other people. But that's why about 10 years ago, some writer friends and I started a writing collective in my neighborhood in Los Angeles. We have an office with I think we have 13 or 14 writers right now, and we share a writing space, and you can come in, you have a desk, and you can be working on your own projects, but be around other people. And that helps with the solitary nature of writing.
So do you write at home at all?
Sometimes, but when I write at home, it's much easier to be distracted by my husband, who was, since the pandemic, we both work from home. He's been working at home. My kids come in the door. There's always laundry to be done. I'm like, oh, maybe I could bake some cookies. And next thing you know, it's very easy to procrastinate when you're working from your house. Much harder when you're sitting at a desk.
But that collective thing you mentioned is really interesting, and I'm wondering how it works when you are actually doing the writing. Do you consult your ideas with other writers, or do you just focus on your own work exclusively?
No, I definitely talk about projects with other writers in the collective. Like we'll sometimes just go get coffee and brainstorm, or someone will wander into someone else's office and be like, oh, I'm really struggling with this. I don't know what to do. And it's great. There is a brain trust quality to it, which is really inspiring.
Are they all like mystery, thriller, crime writers?
No. We have some screenwriters. We have a memoirist. We have another novelist. Everyone's doing different things, which is great too, because it's always wonderful to talk to people who work in different forms of writing, different media, different genres, and learn from each other.
As you mentioned before, your career started quite strong, I would say. Your debut novel was a New York Times bestseller. So how did it affect your mindset, your attitude towards writing?
Well, I would say this. I was very lucky that my first book did very well. But regardless of how well your first book does, the learning process is really the same, because you spend so much time, I think, as a young writer thinking, once I publish a novel, I'm done. I know the rest of my career, after that, writing will become easy. That all you're thinking is the first book. And then you finish the first book, and no matter whether it's a bestseller or it's not a bestseller, you then are like, okay, now what? What do I do next? I have to do this again. Oh my God. And that really, that can be really confusing, and trying to figure out who you are as a writer in the big picture, as opposed to, just focusing on getting a novel done. So, and I think for me, the journey of being a writer was really about discovering who I was and what I wanted to write about, and the stories that interest me, and tuning out all the other voices in my head, which would say, oh, you have to write this way, you have to write that way. If you want to win, if you want to be a bestseller, you have to write this kind of book. If you want to win, Nobel Peace Prize writer, you have to write that kind of book. Mm-hmm. It's about learning how to tune those out and just write for yourself. Which has really been my journey over the last 15 years.
But now I think you're very confident with your writing, aren't you?
I mean, I think, like any writer, I have moments of self-doubt, of course. I do think I've figured out a lot about myself as a writer, and what I like to write, and how to write, and I learned a lot about structure and character, and how to develop conflict. But of course, there's always, every time you start a new book, there's always those moments of doubt. You're like, what am I doing? What is this book going to be? Can I pull this off? What do my readers expect from me? Will they like this? So I don't know a single writer, no matter how successful, that doesn't have those questions in their head at some point during the writing process.
About structure, speaking of structures, first thriller of yours published in Poland was Pretty Things, and I like that it focuses on both characters, Nina and Vanessa. So can you say why you chose that type of dual narrative in that book?
I have a real love for the dual narrative. I have yet to write a book that isn't a dual narrative. I think what happens is I sit down with all the intention in the world of writing a book with one narrator from one point of view. But then as I'm going along, I'm like, wow, but there's this other character, and they're so much a part of the story. And I have these, secrets and that are being withheld. And I want to know both of their secrets. I want to know what makes them both tick. So then I have to write the other character. But with Pretty Things, I always knew from the start that that was going to be a dual narrative story, because the entire structure of the book, the way I conceived it from the very beginning, was about having these turns where the reader's entire understanding of what is happening gets turned on its head. And that was very important to me. You know, who's conning who, right? Mm-hmm. And the only way that was going to happen is if I had a dual narrative and we moved from one person's point of view into the other's, and then back again. And each time you move it, you have this major shift in the story that that turns everything upside down and keeps kind of restarts the engine of the book again, as it were.
Mm-hmm. And so in your, obviously in I Will Be You, your newest book, it's also told from a different perspective. So I was wondering, while reading, is that, you know, is that Janelle Brown thing to do it? And now you kind of confirmed it. And and I'm wondering if your next book will also be, you know, like a dual narrative. Or...
we'll see. I'm trying to write one right now that's not, but it's early days and everything could change. So.
And coming back to Pretty Things, I'm not sure if I'm right, but I had that feeling that you think that social media influencing might also be some kind of a con as well. Obviously, it's just a tool, but it can be a really useful tool for a con.
Absolutely, absolutely. I mean, we live in this new era where people live through screens, and there's so much deception that you can create through these digital personas, your pictures, your images. I mean, there's just so, I mean, when I started really kind of thinking about it, there was so much richness to like how deception in the digital age, whether it's someone on Instagram just being like an Instagram influencer and taking pictures of their life, then it's all very fake and constructed, and that's not who they are at all in real life, but you would never know. They're just a picture on a screen. To the con artists who use digital media social media to actually try and do crimes. You know, one of the stories that I was fascinated by that kind of influenced Pretty Things was when Kim Kardashian got robbed by jewel thieves in Paris back like 4 years ago. And they did it because they were tracking her on Instagram and following her every picture and trying to piece together where she was and what jewels she had with her. And they figured out that she was staying at this particular apartment in Paris. And then they, you know, dressed up as cops, police, and broke in and robbed her. So, I mean, there's all kinds of stuff that can happen. And then you have, you know, catfishing, people who pretend to be someone else on romance sites. You know, there's so much there. There's so much there. So yeah, I'm fascinated by it. Mm-hmm.
And can you describe your own relationship with social media, as Instagram and Facebook and Twitter? They can also be very strong, very useful marketing tools for a writer.
Yeah. So I love Instagram. Of all the platforms, I think Instagram is the one that I enjoy the most, because I feel like I've connected with the most readers there. That there's a real kind of terrific community of book lovers who wanted to post about books, who want to talk about books, who have made friendships over books, who want to reach out to authors. And so I really love that part of Instagram. For me, that's really validating. And being able to connect with authors. Like I have connected with so many authors through Instagram. I follow them, they follow me, we DM each other. Next thing you know, we're like getting together for coffee. So that's what I love about social media. What I hate about social media is this kind of addictive quality to it, the artifice of it, how people, you know, are always trying to put this image up that makes their lives look so good, and how that makes us feel insecure and self-critical. I hate Twitter. I think Twitter is just a place that people go to fight, and I try and stay away from that. And Facebook is also not my favorite, and I'm not on TikTok. But well, although I know TikTok is big for books now, but I can't. Video is too hard for me. But you know, I have children. I have a 10-year-old son and a 13-year-old daughter, and have spent a lot of time because of that, like thinking about what is good about social media and what is bad. And for me, the community part is good, and the self-image part is bad, really. The addictive quality and the insecurity that it causes.
One more thing that came to my mind while I was reading your books, especially Pretty Things, which is kind of full of unexpected twists and turns. Do you meticulously plan your books, or do you, do you invent different things as you go, as you write?
A little of both. With a book like Pretty Things, I knew roughly the story. I knew roughly the structure. I had an outline when I started, but not like everything I don't have long, detailed, structured outlines. I have very loose outlines, because what often happens is, you can have all the plans in the world, but once you start writing and your characters start becoming three-dimensional, instead of ideas in your head, they're like three-dimensional characters on the page, and they become real people. They start making decisions that feel more authentic to their character than what you might have imagined. And so stories change. The overall structure of my books doesn't change that much necessarily, but how plots move, when I cut back and forth between characters, some of the events that happen in the book, I had no idea they were going to happen until I got there. Like there was with Pretty Things there, I don't want to give anything away, but there's a significant reveal towards the end of the book that upends the whole book. And I really didn't know that until I was probably 2/3 of the way through the book. I didn't know that was going to happen. I was 2/3 of the way of the book. And I said to myself, I know that there's something that needs to happen here, and I'm not sure what it is. And then I had this epiphany. I'm like, oh my God, yes, of course, this character has been doing this whole time, and we didn't know it. Which then I had to go back and rewrite the whole book up to that point in order to make that new revelation work. So there's a lot of that. There's a lot of like, I think I have it figured out, but then I get to a certain point in the writing process and realize that, in fact, there's a whole nother aspect to the book that I hadn't anticipated. And so I have to leave myself enough room to change things.
And your books are very character-driven, I would say, and it's interesting how you write not only about what people do, but why they do it. So to what extent is the psychological side of things important to you in writing?
100%. It's the most important thing to me. For me, what I want to write is a great story about someone who does something wrong, something bad, makes a bad decision. Like I'm interested in why people make bad decisions that upend their entire lives and the lives of everyone around them. I mean, I think that's the common theme in all of my books. Whether the bad thing is being a con artist, or it's joining a cult, or it's taking drugs, or cheating on your wife. I'm interested in psychology. I'm interested in what makes people do things, and trying to understand that moment in people's lives where they do the thing where you're like, oh God, don't do that. For me, that's what excites me about human behavior. It's not, not just the mechanics of plot, but the why of everything, like why people do what they do.
And have you ever been thinking about writing a novel with a male protagonist and writing from this perspective?
Male protagonist? I have actually. My first two, my second book and my third book both had male protagonists. Watch Me Disappear was about a father and a daughter. I know it's not out in Poland.
Unfortunately, they haven't been published.
You don't have those books. So, but my second and my third books both had dual narrative, and both had a male protagonist and a female protagonist.
And in I Review, your newest novel, we have female protagonists, two of them, dual narrative, and they are sisters. But before I will start asking about them, there is one more thing that I would like to ask that really interested me, because you portray show business world basically, and you are from California, you live in LA. So does it affect your writing much?
I would say no. I mean, I live in Los Angeles. My husband is a filmmaker, and in a way, yes, it's all around me, and I love movies, and I've learned a lot about storytelling through watching movies and reading screenplays in the same way that I learned from journalism. There's an economy to storytelling that you get in film, and there's a world building that you get from TV series. And so I've learned from that, but I wouldn't say that I've been affected in my own writing tremendously. I feel like, other than the fact that this book does have two female protagonists who are former child actors, I think California as a whole influences me more than Los Angeles specifically.
And you mentioned pop culture influences like TV shows and films. So do they influence your ideas or structure of your books, plot?
I think I've learned about structure from doing reading screenplays, writing screenplays. I don't know. Books are really their own beasts. So you can't take too much from screenwriting or from films. You can learn. I mean, everything I absorb every day, whether it's a newspaper article or a profile in a magazine or a movie or a podcast or a book or a TV show, there's something to be learned from everything. And I feel like I'm constantly learning about storytelling and structure and different ways that you can tell stories from all the media. But yeah, I don't know that I've I'm not writing books imagining them as TV shows or imagining them as movies. If they get made into a TV show or a movie, that's amazing, but you would have to tear the whole book apart to turn it into a TV show. So there's no point in trying to write a book to be a TV show.
And actually, before I forget, what's the status of Pretty Things TV show that was supposed to be made? I remember that Nicole Kidman's, I think, production company bought the rights.
It's been a real long process. That's Hollywood. We're still in development.
Are you like actively involved in that? Or?
Yeah. I am. I wrote the pilot for the show, the TV pilot.
Okay. So can't wait, and fingers crossed. But coming back to I'll Be You, two protagonists are two sisters, Sam and Ellie. And can you please describe a difficult relationship between them? Because they were, as you said, child film stars, but now they are not so close to each other as they used to be, for various reasons, obviously, that I won't reveal. So can you describe who they are and what's the relationship between them?
Yeah, so Sam and Ellie were child actors, kind of like in the vein of the Olsen twins, that were on Full House, where they were kind of plucked. They had this very unusual childhood where they lived on TV sets and they shared a role. So they would each play the same character. And so as they grew up, they had this very codependent relationship where they're identical twins. Everyone's mixing them up anyway. And they kind of they're each other's entire world. But one of them really loves acting. The other one doesn't. Sam, the one who loves acting, kind of goes deep into the rabbit hole of being a child actor, becomes an addict, and her life falls apart. Meanwhile, Ellie, the other twin who hates acting, kind of as soon as she can, she escapes and tries to go have a very normal life as a homemaker and a florist, and with getting married and living in the suburbs. And then, their relationship fractures because of that. And then obviously the story begins when Sam, the bad twin, is called to come home her parents call her to have her come home and take care of her niece, because her sister has checked into a wellness retreat, kind of a spa, and has not returned.
So while you are describing your book, it may sound a bit like a family drama, but suddenly something bad happens. There is this thriller, unexpected thriller, mystery, crime element to it. So when you construct your stories, when you construct your plots, when is this moment that you decide to add like a thriller element to it?
Yeah, I mean, that's usually from the beginning. I know what those kind of suspense moments are going to be, what the plot of the story is going to be. I write what I think what I would describe as slow burn thrillers or mysteries, suspense, where there's a lot of kind of character development as part of the story, but I always know where I'm moving it towards this moment of, oh my God, now everything's turning on its head and we're racing down this new path. But I usually know those from the beginning. That's usually in my premise.
Mm-hmm. And I don't want to reveal too much about the book, but there is this organization, a mysterious cult in your book called GenFem. So does it also have a real life counterpart? Because the twins, the sisters, they have, as you mentioned, Olsen twins. But what about GenFem?
GenFem was inspired by quite a number of different modern kind of cults. There was, I don't know how much you heard about this in Poland, but there was a very large, very successful organization called NXIVM in America, where it was this very charismatic man, and he had a partner who was a psychologist, and they were drawing in all these a lot of actresses actually, but other people, successful business people, into this organization that was all about self-help and getting yourself kind of together and becoming successful in life. They called themselves a success organization. And then, of course, once you were involved, like they ended up taking all your money, and then the women were getting branded, and there ended up being like a whole sex slave component to it. So that was one inspiration for GenFem, because that really happened. I mean, some of the more, you think they're far-fetched moments that in my book are actually based on true stories and things that really happened. There was another one called Synanon that was very successful in the 70s and 80s that I looked for as inspiration. There's a lot of these organizations, these cults, that kind of derive from this idea of self-help and kind of improving yourself and joining a group where you're all going to like help each other become your best self and purge all the toxic elements from your life. And the line for me that's so interesting is, that is what self-help culture really is in modern times. I mean, whether it's Gwyneth Paltrow having a website where she's, selling enlightenment and crystals. And then on the other end of the spectrum, you have a group like NXIVM, which ends up with women branding themselves and becoming sex slaves. But it's all part of the same continuum. And for me, really, what's interesting is where the moment where it tips from being good for you to being very bad for you. And that is really what GenFem is, like that moment that it just tips over and becomes something very bad. Actually,
what was scary about GenFem, is that it's not a religious cult. It's on the surface, it seems like, as you said, like a totally normal self-help, enlightenment organization. That's very scary, because you never know what you are going into at the very first sight.
Yeah, exactly.
And we are not live, unfortunately. We are recording that, but very often during our live sessions with authors, there are like certain questions that the readers always ask, and one of them is basically about writing routines. You have already said something about that quite a lot, but do you have any routines? Do you have any rituals that you need to start writing, to continue writing, and to process all the ideas that you have in your mind?
Yeah. Well, there's kind of two different stages for me in writing a book. One is the very beginning, where you're just trying to figure it out. And that's very slow. It takes a lot of time. There's a lot of thinking involved, and more thinking than writing, really. And my routine for that period of the writing process is to go on really long walks and really long drives. So I will get up in the morning, I'll go for a walk, no music, no podcasts, and, you know, just a walk where all I'm doing is I call it a walk and think. I walk and think. And road trips are great too for the same reason. You get in a car, you can't do anything for hours except for stare at the road and think. So I find that very helpful for clearing my mind and having those moments of inspiration where I'm starting to figure stuff out. And then once I'm really in the writing and once I've made some headway on the book, my routine shifts. And then what I do is, you know, I want to get to my office as soon as possible and get as much writing done as I can. And I start my day by reading the pages that I wrote the day before and doing kind of basically using that as a launching pad to get into my next section. So I'll read, I'll do a little editing, and then I'll go off from there. And then if things are still not coming, if I don't really know, if I'm in a moment that I'm stuck, I'll do a lot of reading. I'll pick up a book that I think, usually one that I've read before, so that I'm not too lost in the story, but like thinking on a bigger picture about how a book is structured. I'll pick up a book, read a few pages, you know, think about what the author's doing, how they did it, and see if that can jog something loose in my own head.
But when does the whole writing process ends for you? Because, you know, when you publish a book, it's not you know, it's not the final phase of the process, because then you have the marketing phase, you're meeting your readers, you're doing press interviews and so on. Do you like that part as well?
I do. That's the fun part. I mean, I love writing too. Writing is fun. Especially like when those moments when you're writing and everything suddenly is clear and you just can't wait to get it down the page and you know what you're doing. Those moments are transcendent. But for me, the really fun part is when a book is out in the world and you're getting to talk to your readers and people like yourself who are book world people and journalists and critics and editors and authors and going out to book festivals. That stuff is really fun. The least fun part is like copy editing.
Oh, okay.
You have to read the book is done, you've done all this, the creative part of the writing, and now they're like sending you these manuscripts. You have to read your book for the 27th time and look to make sure that your commas are in the right place so that you spelled everyone's name right. That's the least fun part, but it has to be done.
So do you work with many people? I mean, do you have many first readers? I know that first reader can only be the one, but do you have any readers that read your books before you send it to your publisher and to editors?
Yeah, I do. I have a writers group that I've actually been part of for a couple of years now. We started during the pandemic, and there's I think we're 6 of us now, 6 authors, and we share pages and read each other's work. And always in the past, I've almost always had a writers group that I've been part of, because I do find it very helpful to have early readers who I trust can give me some feedback along the way. Yeah, it's very helpful to have people you trust.
And during your research phase or idea crafting phase, how do you pick good ideas from bad ideas? How do you test that?
I don't know. I mean, you just...
Is that instinct?
Yeah, you just instinct. You write and it either works or it doesn't work. And you sometimes you need other readers to help you figure out what doesn't work. But often you can just feel it. You know, I find that I can just feel it if it's not working.
And the final question that I have for you, Janelle, is what's next? What are you currently writing on? I know that not all writers want to share that info early, but maybe you will give us some hint about what to expect from you.
I'm one of those writers who doesn't like to talk about what I've done, what I'm working on, because I'm still always trying to figure it out. And until I'm far enough in a book where I'm clear what it is, it's sometimes too early to talk about things. But I will say this, I never want to write the same book twice. I want all of my books to feel original and different and to be doing something new. So that's what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to do with my new book is to try some new ideas and some new structures and some new methods. maybe I'll do a one protagonist, one narrative.
So I will rephrase that question a little. So is there anything that you would like to write, about in the future? Maybe try a new genre or an idea, very old idea that you had like years ago, but don't know how to apply it, but you would like to use it sometime. Is there anything like that? Like, an idea of your dreams that you would like?
I mean, there's so many things I would love to write that I'd love to write something that takes place in the past, in history. I'd love to write something that's, a dystopian fiction like Margaret Atwood. Those are both things that I've toyed with in the past and would, love to do something with in the future. I just need to figure out how to do it in a way that I, can figure out how to do. So.
Yeah. So again, fingers crossed. So Janelle, thank you very much. It's been a pleasure speaking to you. And polscy czytelnicy, wyczekujcie premiery nowej książki Janelle Brown pod tytułem Będę tobą już 28 września nakładem wydawnictwa Agora. Dziękuję.
Thank you so much for having me.